Help! The scream shattered the calm silence of the Caldwell mansion. The grand estate, usually echoing with the soft hum of staff
You think you
moving
could just
quietly
leave?
and the
After
ticking of
everything?
antique
We have to
clocks,
go, now!
pulsed with chaos. Evelyn Caldwell, wife of the billionaire Richard Caldwell, was doubled over on the marble floor. Her hands clutched her swollen stomach, her face drenched in sweat. She wasn't supposed to deliver for another month, but the way her body trembled told everyone something was very, very wrong. The mansion staff froze, paralyzed by shock. The butler dropped the tray of crystal glasses he was holding. Two housemaids whispered nervously, unsure whether to touch Evelyn or wait for Richard's instructions. No one seemed to know what to do, but Amara knew. Amara was the quiet maid from the South Wing, the one most people overlooked. She didn't come from wealth, didn't have a fancy education, but she had eyes that noticed things others didn't. And right now, those eyes saw the signs clearly. Evelyn's water had broken, too soon, and her breaths were ragged and uneven. If something wasn't done fast, both mother and baby could be lost. Richard Caldwell rushed forward, his polished shoes clicking against the floor. Normally, he was the picture of control, the kind of man who commanded boardrooms and signed billion-dollar deals without flinching. But tonight, panic stripped away his power. His voice cracked as he pulled out his phone. "Call an ambulance. Call someone now." He pressed the phone to his ear, pacing wildly. But the mansion's thick stone walls made cell service unreliable. His voice echoed in frustration as he shouted into the breaking connection. "Hello? My wife, she's hello. Can you hear me?" Static answered back. Evelyn let out another piercing cry. She collapsed sideways, and Amara caught her just in time. Evelyn's hands gripped Amara's wrist desperately, her lips trembling. "Please, help my baby," she whispered between labored breaths. Amara felt her chest tighten. She had seen this before, back home in her village, where women gave birth without proper hospitals, where sometimes it was a neighbor or a midwife who made the difference between life and death. She wasn't a doctor, but she knew when every second counted. Her eyes darted toward the driveway. There, under the soft glow of the mansion's lights, sat Richard Caldwell's most prized possession, a sleek black Rolls Royce Phantom. It wasn't just a car. It was a symbol of his wealth, his pride, his untouchable life. The other staff members stood frozen, whispering, waiting for orders. But Amara didn't wait. She had seconds to decide. She looked at Richard, still fumbling with his phone. She looked at Evelyn, slipping further into pain. Then she made her choice. A choice that would shock the entire Caldwell household. A choice that would make her a thief in the eyes of the law and a savior in the eyes of a dying woman.
You think
Amara
you could just
gently
leave?
lowered Evelyn
After
against the
everything?
cool
We have to
marble
go,
wall.
now!
The woman was slipping in and out of consciousness, her face pale, her lips dry. "Stay with me, ma'am," Amara whispered urgently, brushing damp strands of hair from Evelyn's forehead. But she knew Evelyn couldn't hold on much longer. Richard was still shouting into his phone, moving from one end of the grand hall to the other, desperate for a clear signal. "I need an ambulance now. Do you hear me? My wife, she's in labor. It's early." His voice broke again, filled with helplessness. The other staff crowded nearby, but none stepped forward. They wrung their hands, muttered prayers under their breath, and watched in frozen horror. Everyone seemed more afraid of Richard's reaction than Evelyn's condition. Amara clenched her jaw. She didn't have time to wait. She didn't care about rules, or about what people would think. All that mattered was Evelyn and the tiny life inside her. Her gaze snapped to Richard, and that's when she saw it. His keys, hanging carelessly from the pocket of his tailored suit jacket. The silver ring glinted under the chandelier, and she immediately knew what they unlocked. The Rolls Royce Phantom. It was Richard's treasure. Every guest who visited the mansion had heard him boast about it. The hand-stitched leather seats, the custom-built engine, the millions spent just to own it. It wasn't just a car, it was his status. And Amara knew that if she touched it, let alone drove it, her job, her freedom, and maybe even her life as she knew it would be over. But then Evelyn let out another scream, her body arching in pain. The sound tore through Amara's hesitation like a knife. She acted on instinct. In one swift motion, Amara darted forward, her fingers brushing against Richard's pocket. The keys jingled softly as she snatched them, her movements quicker than anyone could stop. Gasps erupted around the room. "Hey!" Richard spun, his face red with fury. What do you think you're doing?" But Amara wasn't listening. She ran toward the mansion's entrance, her heart hammering in her chest. Her shoes slapped against the polished floor, and she burst into the driveway where the Phantom waited like a beast in the shadows. Her hands shook as she pressed the unlock button. The car's lights blinked alive, illuminating the night. She flung the passenger door open and raced back inside. Richard lunged forward to stop her, but he froze when he saw what she was doing. With surprising strength, Amara slid her arms under Evelyn, lifting her fragile frame. Evelyn whimpered, her head resting against Amara's shoulder. "Please, don't let me lose my baby." Amara's throat tightened. "I won't," she promised. Ignoring Richard's furious shouts, she carried Evelyn out of the mansion and lowered her into the back seat of the Rolls Royce. She slammed the door, ran to the driver's side, and pushed the key into the ignition. The engine roared, the sound shaking the still night air. For the first time in her life, Amara was behind the wheel of a billionaire's car. But this wasn't about luxury, it was about life. And in that moment, with Evelyn's cries echoing from the back seat and the mansion staff watching in disbelief, Amara became something no one expected. Not a maid, not a thief, but a woman willing to risk everything. She pressed the accelerator. Tires screeched. The gates swung open. And in the next heartbeat, Amara disappeared into the night with the billionaire's wife, leaving Richard Caldwell standing in stunned silence. The Rolls Royce Phantom sliced through the night like a bullet of black steel. Amara's trembling hands clutched the steering wheel, but her eyes blazed with determination. Every muscle in her body screamed that she was committing the worst mistake of her life, stealing from a billionaire, but her heart shouted louder. This is the only way. In the back seat, Evelyn writhed in agony. Her breaths came fast and uneven, and her fingernails dug into the leather upholstery as another contraction tore through her. "It's too soon," she sobbed, her voice breaking. My baby isn't ready." Amara glanced at her in the rearview mirror, her chest tightening. "Don't you dare give up now. You hear me? You're stronger than you think. Just hold on. I'll get you there." For the first time, Evelyn saw Amara not as a maid in a pressed uniform, but as someone unshakably human, someone who refused to let her die. Between her tears, Evelyn whispered weakly, You've done this before, haven't you?" Amara nodded quickly, eyes locked on the road. "Back home, women had no hospitals. Sometimes I had to help them deliver. But this is different. You need doctors." Behind them, the wail of sirens suddenly cut through the air. Red and blue lights flashed in the distance, growing closer by the second. Richard had done what any wealthy man would do. He'd called the police, reporting his stolen car. But those officers didn't know the truth. To them, Amara wasn't a rescuer. She was just a thief in a stolen luxury car. Evelyn's eyes widened in panic as the flashing lights closed in. "They'll stop us," she cried. "They'll arrest you." Amara's knuckles whitened against the steering wheel. "Not tonight. Not until you and your baby are safe." She pressed her foot harder on the accelerator. The Phantom's engine roared, picking up speed as the city lights blurred around them. But the police sirens grew louder, determined, relentless. Through the rearview mirror, Amara could see 2 squad cars tailing her. The megaphone crackled to life. "Pull over immediately. Hands on the wheel." But how could she explain? How could she tell them that the billionaire's wife was in the back seat, bleeding and crying out for help? No one would believe her until it was too late. She swerved into a side street, tires screeching. Evelyn whimpered from the back, holding her stomach as the car jolted. "Please, not too fast," she begged. Amara's voice broke. "I'm sorry. I'm trying, ma'am. I'm trying." Her heart raced. Every red light felt like a curse, every honk from other cars a reminder that she wasn't just racing the police, she was racing time itself. As she sped down the empty stretch toward the hospital, Amara whispered under her breath, half prayer, half plea, "God, don't let me fail her. Don't let me fail this baby." And still, the flashing lights followed, relentless. To the police, she was a criminal. To Richard, she was a thief. But to Evelyn, she was the only hope left. The Phantom thundered down the main road, its glossy black frame glinting under the city's streetlights. Amara's breath came in sharp bursts as her eyes flicked between the road ahead and the flashing lights behind. The police cars were closing in, sirens screaming, their megaphones booming over the night. "Pull over now. one officer shouted, his voice echoing from the speaker. But Amara didn't flinch. She couldn't. In the back seat, Evelyn was slipping further away. Her face was pale, her body trembling, and her voice weak. Amara, I can't. I don't think I can make it. Amara's heart clenched. She tightened her grip on the wheel and shouted over the roar of the engine. Yes, you can. Don't you dare give up on me, ma'am. You've come this far. You and your baby are not dying in this car. Evelyn sobbed, clutching her stomach as another contraction ripped through her. The sound of her pain drowned out everything else. For a split second, Amara thought of her own mother back home, a woman who once faced a birth without a doctor, saved only because a neighbor acted with courage. That memory fueled her. She pressed the accelerator even harder. The officers behind were relentless. One car pulled to the side, attempting to cut her off. Amara swerved into a narrow lane, the Phantom skidding dangerously close to the curb. Sparks flew as the tires scraped the edge of the road. Evelyn cried out, her head hitting the seat. Please hurry. Almost there. Amara whispered through gritted teeth, her eyes darting toward the skyline. And then she saw it. The glowing red cross of St. Mary's Hospital piercing through the night like a beacon of hope. Relief flooded her veins, but the chase wasn't over. The police cars were still right behind her, their sirens deafening, their lights painting the night in chaos. The hospital entrance came into view. Nurses on late-night duty stood outside near the emergency bay, sipping coffee, unaware of the storm about to crash into their world. Amara yanked the steering wheel, turning hard into the driveway. The Phantom skidded, its tires shrieking against the asphalt. The nurses dropped their cups, rushing forward in alarm. Amara slammed the gear into park, leapt out of the driver's seat, and yanked open the back door. Help her, she screamed, her voice breaking. She's in labor, early labor. She needs you now. The medical team didn't waste a second. Stretchers appeared, nurses lifted Evelyn, and doctors barked urgent orders. Evelyn's hand slipped from Amara's as she was wheeled inside, her weak eyes lingering on the maid's face for just a moment. Don't leave me, she whispered faintly. Amara tried to follow, but the sound of boots and guns clicking froze her in place. The police had surrounded the car, their weapons raised, their voices sharp. Step away from the vehicle, hands in the air. Amara stood trembling, her chest heaving. She lifted her hands slowly, keys still dangling between her fingers. Her heart screamed that she wasn't a thief. She wasn't a criminal. She was just a woman who refused to watch another life fade away. The flashing lights reflected in her tear-streaked eyes as she whispered, more to herself than anyone else. At least she's safe. The hospital waiting room was heavy with tension. Fluorescent lights buzzed faintly above, casting long shadows across the white-tiled floor. Amara sat on a plastic chair, her wrists cuffed, her head bowed. Her uniform was damp with sweat, her hands trembling from the adrenaline that still coursed through her veins. Two police officers stood nearby, watching her closely. To them, she was nothing more than a car thief caught red-handed. But Amara wasn't thinking about herself. Her mind was fixed on one image, Evelyn's pale face as she was wheeled through those double doors. The silence broke when Richard Caldwell stormed in. His expensive shoes clicked against the floor, his jaw set like stone. His tailored suit was wrinkled from stress, his eyes bloodshot. The officers straightened at once. One of them gestured toward Amara. We have her in custody, sir. Stole your car, endangered lives, resisted orders. But before the officer could finish, a doctor pushed through the swinging doors. His scrubs were stained, his mask pulled down. Everyone held their breath as he spoke. Mr. Caldwell, the doctor said gently, your wife and baby are stable. It was a high-risk delivery, but they survived. The baby is premature, but strong. You got her here just in time. The words hit Richard like a tidal wave. His body slumped, and for the first time in years, tears welled in his eyes. He whispered, almost to himself, alive, they're alive. The doctor gave a small nod, then disappeared back into the ward. All eyes turned to Amara. She lifted her head slowly, the weight of exhaustion and fear clear in her expression. The officers looked to Richard, waiting for his command. Should they drag her to jail? Should they charge her with theft? Richard walked forward, each step echoing through the silent room. He stopped in front of Amara, his towering frame casting her in shadow. For a long moment, he said nothing. Finally, his voice broke the silence. Why? Amara's lips quivered. Because nobody else was moving. She didn't have time. I couldn't just watch her die. Her voice cracked as she lowered her gaze. I'm sorry I stole your car, sir. But I'd do it again if it meant saving her. The officers exchanged glances, waiting. Richard stared at Amara for what felt like eternity. Then he did something no one expected. He reached into his pocket, pulled out the cuff key, and unlocked her wrists himself. The metal clinked as the cuffs fell to the floor. You didn't steal my car, he said quietly, his voice thick with emotion. You saved my family. Amara's eyes widened, tears spilling down her cheeks. The officers looked stunned, but Richard held up a hand, silencing any protest. He turned back toward the ward where Evelyn and the baby rested. From behind the glass, Evelyn's weak voice carried through. Richard, thank her. If you love me, thank her. Richard's face softened, breaking down the last of his pride. He turned back to Amara, his eyes glistening. Thank you, he whispered, his voice shaking. You're not just a maid. Tonight, you're our miracle. From that night forward, Amara's name would never be forgotten in the Caldwell household. She wasn't the girl who scrubbed floors or dusted chandeliers. She was the woman who risked everything, even her freedom, to save 2 lives. And in a world that judged her by her uniform and her skin, Amara proved that true worth is measured not by wealth, but by courage. The night a maid stole a billionaire's car, she became the hero of his family's story.